I don't know, but they do take it. And by the way, when last year, this looks like they all had deposits for Christmas song. So last year, Christmas arrived, and I found out out of this cookie cutter. He walks it so hard.
You can do a lot of stuff get it done. And continues to be.
Hey, everybody.
All right, we'll take the questions first. Wow, you have no questions.
Governor, mid-cycle redistricting, what's unfair about the current system that you see that you're calling for this commission?
Well, I just think that us being able to go through a democratic process and hearing from the people is never a bad thing. You know, if you look at the maps that are established right now, those maps were pulled together in days. And frankly, the maps we have right now cut communities, cut neighborhoods. And so all I'm simply saying by the Redistricting Advisory Commission that I've ordered is that I want to hear from the people. And we want to determine, do we have fair maps right now? Because it is my priority and it is my focus on making sure that next November that we have fair maps in the state of Maryland people can vote on.
And Governor, you cite what specific areas you think are unfair, communities, counties, where you currently live?
No, I think that's why we're going through this process, is that I want this commission, it's a bipartisan commission of leaders from across the state, and I want them to be able to go and listen to the people, conduct listening sessions, and really focus on making sure that the maps that we have next November are fair maps that people can vote on.
Governor,
From the legislature in order to effectuate redistricting, it's been made clear by the Senate President that he's not interested in pursuing that mid-cycle. Is this kind of a pressure campaign to move the needle forward?
No, this is just making sure that that the people's voices are going to be heard. It's the reason that when I created the advisory commission, that I've included members of the legislature. I've asked the Senate President to join, which I'm glad he's going to join and serve as a member, same as the Speaker of the House, because we think it is important that we make sure that the voices of the people are actually heard throughout this process. The legislature is going to have to play an important part of the process, but I'm also very clear. There's not one person that can stop a democratic process from happening. That's why I've ordered this larger commission that will include multiple voices, both Democrat and Republican, to make sure that that the people, that their voices are heard in this process.
Governor Moore, the current map was actually adjusted by the state Supreme Court after what initially was out there was deemed unfair.
Yeah.
So do you think personally the current map, including how the courts changed it, is still unfair?
I think personally that it is worth pressure testing whether or not Maryland has fair maps. And I think particularly as we are watching this process taking place within other states, I said if other states are going to go through the process of determining whether or not they have fair maps, so will Maryland. And so I do think it's important that we consistently work to make sure that the maps that we have and that we're voting on next November are fair.
The Senate President has expressed concern that going through this process could lead to the potential of losing a Democratic seat or two. Do you have any concerns about that?
I've heard his concerns, and I just disagree. When I think about this moment that we find ourselves in, when I think about the type of damage that we have now seen, not just to the state of Maryland that we've seen from the federal government, but then also the danger to our democracy. When I'm seeing that we have a White House that is picking and choosing which states that they think should go through processes of determining whether or not they have fair maps, and then telling other states that they should just sit down and be quiet. I just have a fundamental disagreement. I think that what this moment requires is urgency. I think what this moment requires is us using our time and using our intellectual energy to actually push and to make sure that we have fair maps, not to spend time trying to figure out why we should not do anything. And so I respect his opinion. We have a very fundamental disagreement on this. I think this moment requires urgency, and I think this moment requires us to really think critically and make sure that the people's voices can be heard in a very practical and legal way come next November.
Governor, the President just announced about 30 minutes ago that he is withholding the SNAP funds until this shutdown is over. Will that change your plan here?
No, because I mean, again, this is once again another example of the President of the United States who is willing to break the law so children can starve. This is just another example of the President of the United States using food as a tool, as a weapon. I mean, I do not understand, and the level of cruelty that we continue to see from the President of the United States is just absolutely staggering. And so, no, my decision when I put the state on a state of emergency, my decision to say that we are going to streamline supports that will go towards $10 million that are going towards our food banks and to our homes of worship to make sure that people can eat. My decision to make sure that we can come up with supplemental capital to be able to support something that has been a long-standing agreement between the federal government and our states about how we distribute SNAP, that our people are going to be taken care of regardless of the cruelty that we continue and the legal actions that we continue to see from this White House.
Governor, why did you change your mind on the 62 million? Last week you weren't going to do it, now you are. Are you going to increase it? Are you going to change it? Are you going to accelerate it in light of the president's comments?
You know, I've always been very clear that we are consistently going to look and pressure test ways to make sure that our people are protected. And that every decision that I make is going to be not just be data informed, but also something where I wanted the flexibility to be able to move and maneuver and ensure that the people of Maryland are going to be okay. And so that is something I consistently hold on to the rights to be able to adjust as we did yesterday by saying that we are going to, now that when we saw that the president was willing to break the law, we sued the president and we won. And then when judges came back and told the president that you cannot use food as a weapon, when we said we're going to put supplemental supports to make sure that the people of Maryland can be made whole for the month of November, it was also continue to be done on the assumption that the President of the United States is going to follow the laws.
The president in his Truth Social post says it's bloated, right? Too many people are on SNAP who don't need it.
That's really spoken by someone who has no idea what SNAP actually is. I mean, it's spoken, those words coming from the President of the United States, someone who has never understood what it means to be in the middle class, has never understood what it means to actually be food insecure, who's never in his life had to worry about where his next meal is coming from. That's really rich coming from the President of the United States.
Governor Moore, I wanted to describe for us your conversations with Leader Hakeem Jeffries about redistricting in Maryland.
Well, I mean, I talk with the Speaker about a multitude of different issues, and not just redistricting, a collection of different issues. And I'll keep private conversations as private conversations. But what I also know is that my position is a position that I have long held. I have a deep disagreement with just political gerrymandering. I think it's one of the things that people hate about politics, frankly. I also know this: Donald Trump does not get to pick and choose which states are going to have fair maps. That Donald Trump cannot just sit there and call certain Republican states and say, hey, I want you all to find me a congressman here and find me a congressman there, and then expect other states to just simply sit on their hands because they said, well, we went through a process a couple years ago. That's not the way this process works. When we are watching this type of attack on our democracy, when we are watching the President of the United States rig the rules because he knows the only way he can win elections is by actually changing the rules, because you're not going to win elections on your policies. Your policies are deeply unpopular. So what do? You change the rules. And so the only point that I have, and I have long felt this, and I'm not moving on it, is if you have other states that are deciding whether or not they have fair maps, then so will Maryland.
Governor, how do you reconcile your dislike of gerrymandering with what ultimately, I mean, if you want to draw maps in Maryland, they're going to have 8 Democrats in the congressional districts. How do you reconcile your dislike of gerrymandering with what will likely have to be gerrymandering to accomplish the goal?
I think that we need to make sure that we have fair maps in Maryland. And I think when we're looking at the state of Maryland, my only goal in all of this is just simply saying, if you look at our maps, do they properly represent the hopes and the dreams and the aspirations of every person throughout the state? And I would argue that if you're looking at the maps that we have right now, that were put together in days, that cut through neighborhoods, that cut through jurisdictions, that I would argue that I'm not sure if these maps actually reflect that. And so by going through that process of simply saying, do we have fair maps, I think that that's democracy, and I think that's fair.
How do you respond to people, though, who would say that their idea of a fair map is, there's a 2-to-1 registration advantage for Democrats, but that a fairer map in Maryland might involve having at least 2 Republican districts, not 8-0.
I would just simply say, let's just take it to the people then. Part of the reason that I pulled together this bipartisan commission is because I want this bipartisan group of leaders to be able to have conversations with the people of our state to determine whether or not we have fair maps within the state of Maryland. And so, for anyone who said they would have a problem with going to the people to determine whether they have fair maps, I guess my only answer is, What's your issue with democracy?
Governor Moore, look, on that same topic, though, when it comes to an 8-0 map or dealing with registered Republicans in the state, what do you say to them who are concerned that if this does go forward, they would be completely cut out of the representation in Congress when right now there's 30% of registered voters are Republicans in Maryland?
Well, I don't think that's the case. The point of this is not disenfranchising people. The point is enfranchising people. The point is just simply making sure that all of our congressional districts actually have a chance that the people who live in those congressional districts make sure that their voices are heard. The reality is that when you're looking across the country, you know, less than 10% of all congressional districts are competitive right now. Less than 10%. And so Maryland is not alone in the idea that there is a lack of competitiveness that exists when you look at congressional races. I think that Maryland should actually help to lead the charge to ensure that the people's voices are being heard and that the people's ambitions are actually being accomplished by the layout of our congressional maps.
So would you be okay if the map ended up being 5-3?
I just want to make sure that Maryland has fair maps come next November, and that Maryland, the representation that we are sending to Congress is the representation that actually represents the wills, the hopes, the ambitions, and the dreams of the people of this state.
Have you met with the Senate President yet? He told me on Friday that you two have a meeting scheduled this week and that this would likely come up and be a major point of conversation.
We're set to sit down this week.
When?
Sometime this week. I don't have my calendar on me. Sometime this week. But I'm looking forward to sitting down. And there's one thing, listen, and I want to be clear. The Senate President and I agree that we are in a crisis. The Senate President and I agree that the damage that we are seeing from the Trump administration is unlike anything that we have seen in our state's history. That we are seeing how tens of thousands of Marylanders have been fired or furloughed since Donald Trump has become the president. That we have seen billions of dollars of aid and grants being pulled from our state and our institutions. That we have seen federal disaster relief that was supposed to go to our people in Western Maryland that has been denied simply with a letter from the White House saying that support for Maryland is not justified. That we have had a president of the United States that has pulled out the FBI building, and simply because during a press conference he said that the FBI building is not going to go to a liberal state. So the president said, Bill Ferguson and I don't have a disagreement on the crisis that we find ourselves in as a state. But what I know is I want to move with urgency to address it. And I want to show that in Maryland, we are not just going to bend the knee to Donald Trump. That we're going to fight, and we're going to push, and we're going to protect our democracy and make sure the voices of our people are heard. That's where I stand, and I'm not moving from that position.
What do you tell the people that are not receiving SNAP this week? What do you tell the citizens of Maryland?
Well, I would say to the people of Maryland, Donald Trump continues to break the law. That there is a legal obligation that the federal government has of being able to provide SNAP to our people. Now, listen, thank God we're in Maryland. And here in the state of Maryland, that is why yesterday I said that we were going to put together state resources from our fiscal responsibility fund that will help to supplement the money that should be coming from the feds. It's the reason that I put our state under a state of emergency and said that we are going to move resources, $10 million of resources to go to our food banks and our homes of worship and our schools to ensure that our families and our children and our communities, that we're not using starvation as some kind of negotiation tactic, the way we're seeing from the White House right now. And so we expect the president to follow the law. When we see that the president does not follow the law, we'll do exactly what we did before, where we sued him and we beat him in court, because judges agreed that you cannot use starvation as a negotiation tactic, unlike what the president of the United States seems to think.
Governor Moore, back to redistricting, you have said several times you want to hear from the people, it's the people's voice, what residents of Maryland want. How are you possibly going to hear from as many people that want to give a voice to this in a month or less, in the deadline that you have? What's the plan? Will there be public meetings? Will you solicit online or the written comment? How are you going to hear from constituents?
Well, it's part of the reason that I'm very grateful for this bipartisan commission that we pulled together, which will be chaired by our Senator Angela Alsobrooks, to be able to make sure that they are going to be aggressively moving to hear the voice of the people in public ways, utilization of technology. So there is going to be a multitude of different ways that this commission is going to move, and their work starts immediately.
So is there a plan, I'm sorry, but is there a plan for that? Has it been laid out, or is that something this commission has to decide on? Because again, there's only about a month for you guys.
No, the commission's work has already commenced. And so they are going to be able to present the multitude of ways that they're going to hear from the people.
Are you still hoping that there's a special session to get this done, or are you willing to wait until January?
Well, I'm not hoping there's a special session, but I will say this, I'm not taking one off the table.
Before the General Assembly begins?
I will never take my right as the governor to call a special session off the table, because it is something that I don't just take very seriously. It's something that I know when you look at the damage that has happened because of the Trump administration to our state, the fiscal damage, the damage to employment, the damage to the opportunities and the legacies of the people of the state of Maryland. There is no state that has been more exposed to the cruelty of the Trump administration than the state of Maryland. And I will use any and all tools at my disposal to make sure that my people are protected all across the state of Maryland. And that includes, I will never take the option of calling a special session, which is my right as the governor. I will never take that option off the table.
Great. Thank you all. If you guys have any follow-up questions, feel free to hit myself or Ryan up. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, guys.